think big pharma and governments want you to have, like, men and women for that sake, men and women, do you think they want them to have high testosterone or not? Just think about it, like, really. If you said yes, then that's not right. But hear me out. Listen, think about it from this perspective. I bet you've never thought about this. What does testosterone make you do? It makes you feel more energized, more alive. It makes you want to do stuff. It makes you get this go-and-getter mindset. Your body feels good. You wake up, you're like, yeah, let's do this. Let's do this. Let's say you sleep well, you know, you wake up energized, refreshed. You're like hungry after hard days of work. Now, if you're a lifestyle supplement company, or, you know, some supplement company, the way you make business is by selling supplements and improving health. Now, if your testosterone is high, you don't really need the supplements, right? Because there's no need. But what happens if you lower the testosterone? Well, then, all of a sudden, you know, men start having headaches. They start not being as motivated. They start having depression. They start having lack of sleep. Their stomach begins to hurt. What else? You know, everything, which can all be fixed just by raising your testosterone. Now, instead of this, they break this up into different sectors. Let's say 5 things. They break it into, I'll give you an example. Sleeping pills, stomachache pills, antidepressant pills. What else? Well, you know, sexual drive pills. Now, they just took this one hormone, testosterone, which could basically eliminate all these problems, and turn it into 5 or 4. Let's talk about the nature of the problem. Alright, so the whole nature of the problem, well, obviously plastics and estrogenics are cheaper to produce. That's the whole reason they're being used, and that's the whole reason we have this whole giant, you know, platform of commerce based around the plastics. But there's also another fact. For example, these plastics, when they're produced, they oftentimes have to be approved. So we have a study that, for example, goes into like plastics and stuff. Yet, oftentimes, Anthony mentioned something that's known as peer review. So when you write a research paper, let's say you're a scientist who is, for example, you know, been paid and you did research on a specific subject, for example, estrogenics, on why they're good, then that whole research goes to a peer review committee. So it's like usually, Anthony says it's your buddies, kind of. Now, I don't know how true this is because I talked to another professor who finished the University of Illinois. He has a PhD in, you know, laser photonics. Also, but that was 30 years ago, so maybe it's changed. But yet, he says it's rare that happens, that they're like, you know, your peers. But most likely, it's kind of going to be that process of I give you an A, you give me an A. So they approve each other's projects. Now, I assume it doesn't happen on a big level. That fact that, you know, if it's completely false, it's false information, because then it's a matter of lawsuits. Yet, the problem is, when it's these little details that oftentimes get missed, and they're like, well, we don't know if it's true, well, we don't know if it's true either. So, then what happens is, you let these papers slip, well, not you, but the committee of peer approvals, and these facts oftentimes go unchecked. For example, we have a lab that made, let's say, I don't know, plastics for, you know, baby toys. And these baby toys, they had to get, you know, approved as generally safe. Well, if you are in the field of, you know, plastics and toxicology, and your name is well known in the field, and a lot of scientists know you, well, Anthony mentions oftentimes it is even recommended, at least by the Santa Maria University, which he attended, to put your name on studies because it gives you apparently more credibility. Remember? It gives you more ethos from high school or from college. But it's the writing term. So the more credibility you have, the better it is so the more, you know, approval you can get. This is kind of strange because the professor of laser photonics said that sometimes, I guess it depends on the university, but, you know, occasionally the name isn't shown because then it can cause bias, but then you have the credibility aspect. So it's one of the two. And I guess universities either do it or they don't, but those who do it definitely leave the studies at a disadvantage because the studies are not going to be fully analyzed. They're kind of just more based on trust. And if these little micro facts that could be or could not be wrong don't get checked. Now, let's talk about media spin. So, the media is all over. You know, the news, you have Fox News, you have CNN, you have all the other stuff, you have social media. Well, social media is more like kind of, you know, especially Instagram and Snap, it's more like celebrity news, so that doesn't really count. But personally, I don't recommend you guys watch the news. Like, you know, if there's a big event, you're gonna hear about it. Like, what's it called? The match between, I don't know when you're watching this, but the match between Elon Musk and Zuckerberg is supposed to take place some point. You know, somebody, like, people are talking about it. When ChatGPT came out, people are talking about it. It's not like, whoa, I missed the news. Whoa, no, how could I? Like, bro, it's everywhere, you know? And oftentimes, the media, they put a lot of spin on these sort of unorthodox. It's all about commerce. Remember, what is it all about? It's all about commerce, exactly. So, the media, they put a spin on products that pay them more. So, for example, like, you know, those CBD gummies on YouTube, like, I'm sure they're not healthy for you. You've seen those ads, you know, like, I tried those gummies. Like, it's such a classic, you know, like, what the hell is in these products? Like, why are these products advertised, you know? It's, you don't know what is inside. It's just a jelly that's, like, made with, you know, stuff. So, but they were probably advertised, and the scientists were probably paid in order to spin the news and get all that stuff. So the news oftentimes, it also cherry picks stuff. So, like, let's say if it's important news, but it's not necessarily fun news, versus fun news that is not really important, so celebrity stuff. Would you rather hear about the interesting news or the important news? Now, you might be saying, well, yes, I want the important news, but in reality, the way our brains work is they want the fun news. So, it gives us, you know, dopamine, it gives us adrenaline, it gives us all these hormones releases. So, oftentimes the media play on this. And they give us the news that we want to watch, that we don't maybe necessarily need to watch, and that oftentimes, I would say, is often false. Now, let's talk about the errors, because oftentimes the errors happen in studies. So, about this, we have Anthony, who says, there's a CEO guy of a big pharmaceutical company. Now, he doesn't name the name because it's confidential, but he says that person told him that whenever he goes and meets with him for lunch or for anything, they discuss. And they discuss stuff. And amongst those discussions, Anthony learned that, in fact, a lot of those new products that come out that are like, this is gonna, you know, the Mixer 5000, the Laser 5000, the, you know, Make You Breathe Agent 5000. So all these crazy new inventions that are supposedly revolutionary, that are gonna change your life, and even chemical solutions, so, like, you know, products, oftentimes he says we buy them and we test them. And you know what happens? Try to guess. Guess how many times they usually work. Now, I'll tell you, it's not 0, because they obviously work sometimes, but try to guess. Close. So, it's 50%. It's 50% of the time they actually work. So, think about it. All those new, cool solutions to your health problems, like those, let's take the gummies, for example, you know, half of them, when tested in like Eli Lilly or something, you know, those big pharmaceutical giants, when they test them, 50% of the times they don't even work. Because when they recreate the model, it doesn't get in. So it doesn't deliver the effect that it's supposed to deliver. That's kind of weird, right? So keep that in mind too. In air, we don't have them in nature, but for example, in medical rooms, we have the phthalates. Remember what phthalates are? They're the little sprinklers in plastic. They fly across the room in medical facilities, because think about all the medical equipment. Most of it is made from plastic, except from needles. Though I bet you they have plastic needles, 100%. Well, not actually, I'll probably break, but anything aside from needles, a lot of the plastic stuff. We have the estrogenics in water. Now, just a fun note, Anthony talks about this a lot. So, atrazine, which category of estrogenics is it? It starts with an H, herbicide. And this estrogenic is the first one we talked about in the previous video. If you haven't watched it, please go watch it. It's really cool. you'll learn the 10 top most potent estrogenics. It's life-changing, I guarantee you. And what happens in the water is we have 200 nanograms per liter of atrazine, and this, just 200, turns the frog's male reproductive system into female. Now, Anthony talks about this quite a bit, so I don't want to stay on this too long, but basically 3,000, that's a lot more. A lot more. Again, I emphasize, a lot more than 200 nanograms per liter. And I get like frogs absorb stuff through their skin, but like we drink this stuff, we literally ingest it. And ours is 3,000 nanograms per liter, which again, it seems small. It makes a difference. It compounds. You gotta say estrogenics, there's stuff that compounds. So they compound over time. And it's not like, oh, I drank, a soy with estrogenic, herbicide filled water. And now I'm like, I got gynecomastia, I've got man boobs. No, it happens to you over a process, like let's say 3 or 5 years, even 2, it depends on where you are. But please keep that in mind. Water, always filter. We'll get into the tips how to actually filter and how to carry water. It's very simple. You can do this. That's the crazy thing. So you can do all this stuff. You just have to pay a little bit more attention, and we'll teach you the steps. So let's move on to the 7 deadly sins, which Anthony refers to as the 7 deadly diseases, which estrogenics cause. We'll breathe through them. You're a freaking legend. Now, I'm sure you've heard that lean people are considered to have more testosterone on average than fat people. Now, why is this? Well, let me explain how estrogenics affect fat and how fat affects in turn estrogenics. So, estrogen in itself is hydrophobic, so it is afraid of water. Now, this means that it stays away from water. If you're afraid of something, what do? You face your fears. That's a trick question, bro. You face your fears and you go straight at it. So, but, estrogenic doesn't face its fears. It's just a big, and estrogenics, they go in your fat cells. So, once they get in the bloodstream, they try to get out, and they get stored in your fat. So that's obviously your love handles, your, lower pecs or around the gynecomastia area, your glutes. And it was crazy. So why is it that men and women store fat in different ways? So if it's let's say it's a fat man, the fat goes in the man and his gynecomastia, his stomach, his glutes, his love handles, all the worst parts. But in a woman, when she eats, her ass gets bigger, her, chest gets bigger. It's because that's where they store fat, bro. It's an uneven battle. That's all I'm gonna say. You can't win this war. If you're a woman, just sit on your butt, get more estrogens, bro, and you're gonna be set. You're just gonna, get in better shape just by having more estrogens and more fat that goes to the appropriate areas. Obviously, don't overdo it, but the places that fat usually goes in the woman is, the thighs, the butt, the breasts. So usually the areas that men find attractive. Now in a men, it's the complete opposite. They go to the worst possible areas. And let's continue. So we have the estrogens. They basically go in fat cells and they sit there. So they just clump in the fat cells. And interestingly, and I was pleasantly surprised at this. So apparently this can stay in the fat cells for about 1.5 years. Like, listen, that's not too bad. 1.5 years. By that time, you should be able to burn all that fat down. And because the simplest way is obviously you can wait till they get out, but some estrogenics, they stay in your fat for up to 10 years. That's a lot. Unless you're, want to have a 10-year journey. But what would be simpler if you just lose fat? So instead of waiting 10 years, you can just, instead of 10 grueling, think how long it is. 10 freaking years. You're gonna sit there for 10 years carrying all these estrogens in you, when in the span of a few weeks, a few months maybe, you can just burn half that fat down. You'll have half as less estrogenics, because the simplest way to have estrogenics exit your body is just by burning fat, because estrogenics is in fat. And when you burn the fat, the estrogenics get out with the fat. So you sweat, and Anthony mentions when you sweat, always make sure to, take a shower or wipe it down. Wipe yourself down, take a shower, For men, please be a little careful. So saunas are great. I've been a lot in my whole childhood. I've been in saunas, you know, banya, if anybody knows what that means. So basically, cool stuff. You know, you go in the spa room, you get all heated up, you release the sweat, all the toxins, all the fat, the estrogens, they get out. Make sure to take a little shower or to at least wipe yourself down to make sure they don't go back in your body. So your sweat it evaporates. They're right, you know, your sweat is evaporating. But those toxins, they stay, they don't evaporate. So they will just go back in your body. Make sure to just clean it off. Now with the sauna, precaution for men. Listen, extensive heat, and this is pretty recent too. Not a lot of people know this. Extensive heat can, in fact, hurt your reproductive material. So you know, there's a reason that your two balls are located away from your body. And when you heat everything up to an extensive temperature, well, then it affects the quality. So just don't go too overboard, you know? Don't do it too often, but keep it in mind. That's just a bro advice, you know? I got you. Stay healthy, bro. Health is important. Now, notice something interesting. In Europe, for example, the people are a lot skinnier. And the estrogenics list there from the previous video, if you've watched it, is significantly lower. It's like 80-90% lower. Just some food for thought. Does losing estrogens correlate with losing fat, perhaps? Well, looking at America, the most obese country in the world, with also the most relaxed laws on estrogenics, pretty plausible. I honestly don't doubt it. Now, just to touch on depression. So, Anthony points out a study that said that women who are on birth control are a lot more prone to depression. Now, you can obviously say that, well, they're probably going through hard times, obviously they're going to be depressed, and yet, it's the chemical stuff in their brain. So, for example, in India, there was another study that also showed they're pretty happy in general. So it's the group of happy people, and they started using pesticides. So they would come in and they would spray like, you know, pesticides everywhere. What they noticed is the number of suicides increased. So in those less happy neighborhoods, upon the multiple continuous use of pesticides, caused a lot more suicide rates. So it caused the chart to go basically to skyrocket to an extent. Very, again, interesting to keep in mind. And a quote by Anthony, he says, hormones can cause mood disturbances and should be administered with care. People, they're just, again, injecting stuff in their body. They're taking pills that they don't know about just because the doctor, please, I urge you, honestly, just don't trust people. Like, you wouldn't trust, you know, let's just admit it, you won't probably trust your boss that he has the best interests at your heart. He probably just wants to make, you know, unless it's a good boss, they're rare, that they have your best interests at heart, and they want to actually, usually want to boost the company. Same with a pharmacist. He wants to boost his salary. What is it all about? Tell me. Commerce. It's all about commerce. So you can't expect to have, you know, a fat estrogenic doctor who probably has, you know, imbalances in his own brain to tell you about just taking random stuff. So please be careful. Testosterone. Testosterone is super important for males and for females. Why? Because, we'll get into it a little later. Basically, let's start from the fact that our jaws, since the beginning of human times, began to become more and more feminized. It's called like facial feminization or something. Now, listen, this jaw does not break, and I'm sure if you're watching this, your jaw probably doesn't break that easily as well. So, especially if we get this, if you finish watching this and you hop on this routine of bringing up your testosterone, reducing estrogen, your jaw is going to be made of steel. Your boxing ring name is going to be like something steel jaw. And I don't know. So basically, your jaw will be crazy. Not just your jaw, everything will be at the God tier. We have the first testosterone tester that was invented in the 1940s, and it measured the different amounts of testosterone, and it showed that from the 1940s, our testosterone, it's not as massive here. Our testosterone didn't like go down 10 times. It is very dangerous, but it's not as insane. Maybe it's better to think of it as more intense, but it's not as intense yet. So it did drop in half, which is really bad. I gotta tell you, it's bad. From the 1940s. And I think if we accelerate on the use of estrogenics, then it's gonna be bad. If we continue using the estrogenics at the rate we do, it's still gonna be very bad. Because it's gonna continue to get smaller. If we reduce it, it's gonna be better. Reduce the estrogenic amount that we're consuming. Question for you ladies. Would you love to improve your bone density, your sexual desire, your muscle mass, your mood and energy, your tissue development, and your mental well-being? If you do, the crows definitely do. That's a female crow right here, and you hear it. It's like, I do. But basically, in order to do this, you just boost your testosterone. Not to the big extent, but just a little bit. Exclude estrogenics. All of those things I've mentioned, they will become absolutely prevalent in your life, and you're gonna enjoy your life a lot more. Now, what's funny is the doctors talk about the average testosterone, and Anthony pokes a lot of jokes at this. He says the average testosterone ranges from 250 to 1,000 nanograms of testosterone per deciliter. Do you know how big that is? Have you ever... Let me give you an example. So, Anthony gives the example. It's like saying you should run anywhere from 0.2 miles to 26 miles each day. That is most people like a 5K. That's less than 5 miles, and that's considered a marathon standard. 0.2 miles is like the distance you probably walk from your neighborhood. Like when you get out of your neighborhood, that's maybe a little more. That's a huge difference. 26 miles is like, you can some cases you can just go to another city by 26 miles. You can probably circle, your whole community in 26 miles. The whole, like your store center, your central town, all of that. It's a huge difference. And for example, if you've seen a man with 250 nanograms per deciliter of testosterone in comparison to a man with 1,000 nanograms per deciliter of testosterone, the difference, I'll give you an example. The 250 nanograms per deciliter testosterone man wakes up. He's like, I don't feel good. I want to get back. He probably doesn't even turn his alarm. What does he do? He probably, faps. He's in bed. He's like, I don't want to do this. My head hurts. My stomach hurts. He's basically really not feeling good. He's probably overweight. Now, let's not get to cortisol and estrogen are not the same. So cortisol makes you be the stress. I can do this. It makes you anxious. It makes you kind of like a little sussy, So it's like you're this annoying kid who's like, yeah, I don't want to do this. So you can be like chubby, full of estrogen, tired all the time, not feeling good, but you can still be like reserved, if it makes sense. Versus being high in cortisol. This man probably does not execute at all. He probably hops on his computer. He barely walks. He probably goes to his shopping center at Walmart and he takes the little driving car like when he can fully walk, but he just doesn't have that energy. He probably, I doubt he pulls a lot of girls. That's just my opinion. Now, a man with 1,000 nanograms of, nanograms of per deciliter of testosterone. There we go. So that man wakes up. He jumps out of bed. He's your classic, top tier male. Or obviously, it can be a female. But I'm just talking about a female, unless she goes on HRT or TRT. It's practically impossible for her to reach 1,000 nanograms per deciliter of testosterone. Now that's good. That's we don't need women with 1,000. We need beautiful, kind, gentle women. That's the whole point. But for a man with 1,000 nanograms per deciliter of testosterone, he wakes up, he jumps, he turns off his alarm. He's like, yeah. He's like, he's maybe got a punching bag outside. He, does his morning routine. He drinks his water. He doesn't even need coffee at this point. He goes, he boxes the bag. He knocks, the stuff around it down. He's completely, energized. He's saying hello. He's like, pew, pew, pew. It's like a laser beam, like everywhere. He's radiating his energy. It's a totally different ball game. So, I think it's really disgusting for them to put this weird scale that makes you somewhere in between healthy. It's silly. It's stupid, guys. Really, really, it's a stupid way to measure. I don't know, but it's because they want to expand all of that stuff. So, for example, another study Anthony mentions, it's coming to my head, is about vitamin D. How many of you guys drink vitamin D? So, vitamin D is now being considered decreased. So, the standard dose of vitamin D, I forget the number, but so the scientists want to get it lowered. Because nowadays, people have a lot less vitamin D than they did before. I'm sure it's because of estrogenics, so it has to be part of it. So, the vitamin D is dropped down to a lot smaller, and they're thinking of, instead of fixing the people who got smaller in vitamin D, they're thinking to just, let's just adjust the bar to the smaller people. Like, it's such a stupid, arrogant way to go about it. It's not going to solve anything. It's just going to make us weaker, and we have to stand up against this. But in general, the sort of average that Anthony recommends is double anything they say. So like the average is 400. Right now, it's about 400 to 500. Probably by the time you're watching this, it's going to be like 400, bro. So really, it's going to be down to 400. And maybe even 350. I don't know how long it's gonna be past this video, but basically the aim is to double it. If it's 400, aim for 900, 850, 800. Don't go below 800. That's how it's supposed to be. That's how your grandpa was. That's probably how maybe your dad, but for sure your great grandpa, maybe your grandpa. When they were young, they had those amounts of testosterone. That's how it worked. And it's really, really cool because it helps us perform. It's the driven stimul that kind of, gets us out of bed and makes us execute hard tasks. It makes hard work feel good. That's the whole essence of testosterone. Cholesterol. Let's talk about cholesterol. Very important. A ton of people get this confused. Now, this is not going to be from Anthony. This is just me learning from another scientist, a trusted source, and I want to tell this to you because this is important. I do everything to save your testosterone. And because we need this, bro. I got you. Anything for testosterone. So, let's say we have the cholesterol. It's considered bad. Listen, it's the stupid people who think that cholesterol is bad. The best way to have you gain testosterone is to eat eggs in the evening, prefer. Morning, I don't think it's best to eat them in the evening. I eat my eggs in the morning. I really don't think there's a difference. I have 4 eggs every morning. I get organic eggs. Now, they're good eggs. They're organic. But it would be even better if I got whole range-free pasteurized eggs, so they have the dark orange yolk instead of the yellow yolk and the light yellow yolk. It's like orange yolk. That's how you know it's a good egg. And the reason it boosts testosterone is because of cortisol. Cortisol is not bad. There's 2 types of cortisol. 2. It's not 1. It's the HTL, which is the good cortisol. This cortisol is what you need. So this is simpler. This is not, there's just 2, good and bad. This is the case where it's so simple that people just need to look a little bit deeper into the research and understand that HTL, which is the cholesterol from eggs, it's good and it helps your body functions. Now, the people with, bro, they piss me off, bro. These people who have high cholesterol, it's because it's because you're an old, you know who you are. I don't want to swear, you're an old fat man or, someone. You have something that's called HDL, which is the other part of the cortisol, which is the bad cortisol. This cortisol does not come from eggs. It comes from your liver. It comes with age. So HDL, it does not come from eggs. HTL comes from eggs, and that's always healthy. Now you can obviously, if you eat too many eggs, like let's say you continuously eat, obviously if you drink, like anything you do, if you drink water, you're gonna die eventually. But there's not a lot of harm. It's so many benefits in contrast to all the contrary, and in contrast to all the negatives of HTL, the good cortisol, versus the HDL, which the fat people, the old people have. It's just because your liver loses its function and its quality over the years, so it starts making bad cortisol. When your insulin rises, everything rises. You know, your blood gets worse because that's the bad cholesterol. It only happens in age. If you're anywhere, I was gonna say 30, even if you're like in your 40s, in your 50s, if your liver is perfectly healthy, then you will not have cholesterol problems. Go ahead and eat your eggs. It's gonna be absolute, especially if you're a young guy. Especially if you're a young guy. If you get your sleep and you eat your eggs, you're gonna be absolutely rolling. Now you can start with 3 eggs. A lot of people recommend. I personally eat 4 eggs just because I'm at the top echelons of society. You know, it's just 3 is like too little for me. I go for the 4. But you know, like if you obviously, if you want to, you can eat 4. If you want to like bump it up to 5, you could eat them with the yolk. Super important. Egg white and the egg yolk. Very, very important. Please don't be, I know, you know, my grandma, for example, when I was young, she used to like, sometimes, tell me if your grandma did this, she would like take the yolk out, put the whites, what is it called? The clear stuff, the protein of the egg, and then like take the yolk out because it was like apparently bad. Hey, listen, it's, if you're a man, if you're a woman and you want to boost your testosterone, please eat the whole egg. There's nothing bad. It's just the pharma psyop that's telling you to, you know, make sure you separate into all these micronutrients so then we can package them and sell them to you individually instead of like, it's all simpler. Think about it. Your great-grandpa, your grandpa, they've been living on farms, you know, they survived. There were none of these micronutrients. Yes, they might, you know, have their, you know, bro science medicine bro science, you know, diet where they're like, yeah, let's or you know, back in the old days they're like, let's think this is a herb, this is this. But at this day and age, it's just so much garbage out there that just eat like, you know, the old people ate. Not like old people, like 60 plus. I mean like back in the old days. Eat like them and you'll be absolutely healthy. I guarantee this to you. Eat like cavemen, eat like your ancestor. You're going to be full of testosterone, full of fuel, but avoid estrogenics.